Welcome to our panelists and to our audience members. We are beginning our Dexis Dialogues with Dexis topic today, which is combating disinformation by knowing your audience. My name is Tamara Babiuk. I'm the Senior Director here at Dexis, and Dialogues with Dexis is an informal forum that brings diverse perspectives from a variety of different sectors, organizations, countries, and localities to debate some of the more pressing issues that are facing us as an international community. Disinformation is one of the most destabilizing factors, and we look forward to having an enriching discussion and having moderated by Vera Zakem. Vera, we're delighted to have Vera. Vera is a leader at the nexus of technology, democracy, national security, and policy. She's a senior policy and technical advisor at the Institute for Security and Technology, and advises several different organizations, many of which you are here today. And really, she's looking at different approaches for building a more resilient information system and a more resilient information environment. So I'm pleased to introduce Vera, who will introduce our moderators, a couple of small housekeeping tips. And again, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to a lively and provocative discussion.
Thanks so much, Tamara. Again, thank you everyone for joining us here, depending on where you are, if it's either morning or afternoon or evening. Again, my name is Vera Zakem, and I am delighted to be here virtually with all of you. So as Tamara said, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about not just disinformation, but really understanding the audience and the context to really understanding, assessing, combating disinformation. And before I introduce the panelists, let me just say one thing, how important this topic is. And I would even venture to say this is not just a counter or disinformation topic, regardless of what you're focusing on in affecting stability, improving development in developing nations, security, fighting corruption, understanding audience and understanding context at the local, also at a subnational level, is absolutely critical to finding the right mix of solutions to some of these very thorny challenges. So that is why for this series, for this event, we wanted to focus on really the audience and how do you actually segment and understand your audience. So before we get into what I think will be a very enriching discussion, let me first introduce to you our panelists. So first, Will Elliott. He is highly collaborative. He's a senior account executive with the Bravo Group, with a highly collaborative approach and strategic communications background. Will build strong relationships with client partners to solve the most complex challenges. Will has traveled nationally and internationally to develop and execute communication strategies on behalf of his clients. Prior to joining the Bravo Group, Will was an award-winning broadcast photojournalist and documentarian. He attended Widener University, where he studied communications with a concentration in broadcasting. Dereja Siyum Mengistu is a peace and stabilization advisor for Dexis Consulting Group. Dereja is a peace and security, governance and development program specialist with more than 10 years of experience working with several international organizations in Ethiopia. As Dexis team lead for the Promoting Religious and Ethnic Tolerance in Ethiopia program, he led activities to counter hate speech with diverse youth populations. Before joining Dexis, Dereja worked as stabilization advisor for the Horn of Africa at the Royal Danish Embassy in Addis Ababa, and Dereja has a master's in governance and development from University of Antwerp. Anastasia Norzynska is a behavior scientist and head of communications for development unit at UNICEF Ghana. Anastasia is a communications professional for social and behavioral change with 15 years of experience directing campaign and interventions for international organizations and governments and nonprofits in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Ghana, France, Kyrgyzstan, Kosovo, Moldova, Ukraine, and Zambia. Anastasia is a skilled university lecturer trained and author of online courses and manuals on communication behavioral sciences. And she has an executive master's in behavioral science from the London School of Economics and a PhD in education of communication professionals for Boris Grishko Kiev University and a master's in legal journalism from Odessa National Academy in law. So very impressive group, as you can probably attest. So to start us off, let me kind of start with all of you, and I'm going to go one by one. Perhaps Anastasia, I will start with you, and then we'll go down. Just tell me a little bit about, before I kind of, we get into the broader conversation, sort of what your work is in addressing disinformation and hate speech and the work that you have done, and then really thinking through kind of how you approach really understanding your audience. So just so that our audience members actually understand a little bit where each of our panelists is coming from.
Thank you, Vera. So Ghana was in a very interesting situation because we were the first country to receive COVID vaccination as part of COVAX facility. So we received it as a part of donation, and we were the first developing country to face this, concept. Okay, here are vaccines, they're for free. After all the rumors that already existed in other countries that got the vaccines or started the vaccination rollout. So we were in a actually very hot spot. That from one side, all the hesitancy around AstraZeneca, any kind of adverse events was already there online. And we, as one of the African countries, has quite a big history of quite a huge vaccine hesitancy. So all the media, I think we did a rapid analysis, speaking about how we address the situation. We didn't have a lot of control when the vaccination will start. We received the information like 5 days before the vaccines will arrive. So we had 5 days to prepare the whole campaign. And then with a rapid analysis we did, we saw that almost like 80% of population is quite negative. And the issue was actually how to address it, how to address all the rumors that exist. They float from online to offline, from offline to online. They float from other countries to Ghana, some of them specific for Africa, some of them specific for Ghana. How to make the research so rapid that it will inform strategy and to develop the strategy that will work immediately. So imagine that you need to face something in 5 days. You need to make country prepared in 5 days, having all these rumors around and misinformation around. I have some collection of cover pages of media, and it was also not helpful at all. So you would expect to see misinformation only in online, where you cannot control, where there's no kind of filter, where people say what they think. But also when you see it in media, it's a completely different challenge. So from my side, the lessons learned and what we did is that to be prepared with a very rapid research, rapid that you have. We in UNICEF have some platforms. We did the SMS and audio response research within like a couple of days. In our context, messenger matters. So president was the first to be vaccinated, followed by the King of Ashanti and some religious leaders. And in our context, it worked incredibly because it was informed by research. So in the research, we ask whom you trust, what are your concerns, which, why you say no. And by rolling out these reasons, we saw that, okay, the people do expect first, decision makers to be vaccinated first. So that was clear, and he was vaccinated. He was vaccinated using this, poster behind me. So this research informed us about the concerns. Safety was the major concern. So safety was one of the messages we used. And also, I think later we will speak about how to address different audiences, because we also face the issue that the most educated people, like health workers and teachers, were actually the most hesitant. Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing is a rapid research, how quickly you can actually understand your audience concerns and how quickly you can address them massively.
Well, thank you so much. That's extremely helpful. And it's fantastic to see how research was so critical in combating COVID dis and misinformation, as we see obviously with not just lack of data, but rumors kind of flying everywhere. And I think how that actually impacts in Ghana and just in other countries around the world. So I think that's really, really informative. Derja, let me go to you over to Ethiopia. So would love to hear a little bit about your work that you have been doing with Dexis around this topic, and really kind of just would love to hear in the context of like why in this work, understanding the audience at different levels and kind of segmenting them, whether we're talking about youth or elderly, and why it's really, really important for you and your team to come to a really good understanding to come up with the right solutions, and also in the context that you have. Good.
Thank you, Vera, for the introduction and for the question as well. Let me start let me try to answer your question with a bit of context what Ethiopia is undergoing currently over the past 4 years. As you may know, or as many of you know, that Ethiopia is undergoing through a violent and turbulent reform process in the past 4 years. And since the new prime minister came to power, the power of online media and the power of mainstream media is really playing different roles in the country's reform process. In relation to this, the country has also undergone through very violent conflicts which claim the lives of many Ethiopians. The cause of the conflict might be ranged from political differences to ethnic rivalries. Amid of all this, the role of social media is very negative. The mainstream media becomes irrelevant because the social media is taking over as the mainstream media is providing information periodically, and nobody is giving an ear or nobody is giving attention to the mainstream media for many reasons. People are lured to the social media as everyone checks the news, everyone checks the social media on their phone. Much of the decisions and much of the people's decision to involve in violent conflicts were unfortunately driven by social media calls and social media disinformation propagated or disseminated through the social media platforms, mainly Facebook in Ethiopia and Twitter and YouTube lately. So in late 2019, Dexis has started a project to combat online hate speech and disinformation in Ethiopia. The name of the project was promoting religious and ethnic tolerance in Ethiopia. So our main target audience, we would like to influence, or we wanted to reach out with the youth who are active on the online platform. So we collaborated with universities, as many times the offline community is disregarded in addressing the disinformation campaigns or disinformation capacity building in Ethiopia. So we included community and religious leaders who are offline, who do not use that much, or who are not active on social media, and the working groups of the universities. We were collaborating with 2 universities, Jijjiga University in the eastern part, the Somali region, and in Oromia, Jimma University in the western part of the country. So in that project, we targeted including the users from different departments and the communities representatives from different ethnic groups and from religious groups, so that they can take the message or whatever counter messaging that we have to their constituencies. And the students will go on the online and try to counter disinformation whenever, hate speech and disinformation whenever they encounter. The task, you can take it like this. Our students' effort might be small, but when it is multiplied by community and religious leaders, they are highly multiplier, because they take the messages from the working group discussions that we have quarterly to their constituencies. Let us say the Muslims will use it in their Friday's gathering and the Christians on the Sunday gathering. That's how we were trying to balance how to reach the community and how to reach the target audiences. So mainly we targeted in this project the youth, university students, and the offline community in the host city universities.
That's really, really fascinating. So it sounds like within this initiative, you really had the different audiences and the segments of audiences and audience in mind, which I think is super, super critical to addressing this challenge. Will, let me turn over to you. And again, I just would love to hear about some of your work and kind of from your perspective, how knowing your audience and segmenting your audience, it also kind of from the communications perspective of really understanding really becomes super, super important on a global scale in countering disinformation and other ills, I should say, online.
Yeah, thanks. And excuse the fact that I'm only on voice, that I'm part of the massive Comcast outage right now. I think for us, our a few years ago, we underwent a transformation and realized the importance of centering all our work around audience. And because most of our work is around the intersection of public policy and communications, this was a really important way to, it's really important for us to realize that, one challenge that a lot of communication programs face is the fact that they become very lost in the tactics, and we deal with a lot of clients, a lot of organizations who know what they want to say, but just don't think about how channels on which to reach their audience or what their audience wants to hear. And so what we like to do is take a very audience-centric approach, to build out strategies, then to communicate with people in the way they want to be reached. And in 2020, we partnered with Dexis on a pilot program in Bolivia, and with a fact-checking organization, a digital-first fact-checking organization, who was, attempting to help combat disinformation in their country, but had basically not gotten past just let's, do this work to do it. And so, research, echoing Ansazi's earlier sentiment about how research being the key to building out these strategies, through a combination of publicly available data and interviews with members of the team in country, we were able to, and looking at the data they already generated. I mean, I think, one thing that we like to preach to our clients is every piece of communication, basically everything you do creates a data point. And whether that's online and actual ones and zeros, on your Google Analytics, on your, in your organization's Facebook account, or whether that's an offline event, if you're conducting a survey, everything creates a piece of data, and it's important to capture all that, learn from it, and then use it strategically. And so, when I was in Bolivia on behalf of Dexis, talking to the members of this organization, one thing they had said that really stuck with me and became the driving force of our program was, all of this work we're doing is for nothing if it doesn't reach our audience. And so, that was really the key to then kind of turn that back around on the leaders of the organization and take what we were learning from, their Facebook analytics, from their Google analytics, from their conversations with members of the community, and then really understanding how we can tailor the content, tailor the messaging to help combat what, first was a project of combating electoral disinformation in February of 2020, which then quickly became, combating healthcare, or, combating the novel coronavirus and disinformation around it. And so it was interesting, even simple things as, let's take a look at all of your Facebook analytics data, and it shows, the majority of your audience is reaching out to you at around 1 o'clock, but your content isn't going up till 5 or 6. So let's look at producing content earlier in the day to get this fact checking, get these infographics onto your web pages, your social channels at the times when the audience are using your product. So then you're, reaching them as they're trying to reach out to you. And even something as, relatively simple as that was, such a aha moment. And, that really helped build, we really helped build internal capacity to just start thinking smarter and taking a look at the demographics of your audience and, A/B testing content, being able to just move quickly as new narratives are developing to, and not just reactively fact checking, but also to be proactively producing infographics or producing video, producing audio content. And then offline, we also could see that we were making great progress in certain cities, but not others. And, attempting to partner with existing media organizations outside of the capital to try to have them, disseminate our information that we were producing for online, offline. And it was just really, it was a really great project because we really, helped this organization understand that they need to put their audience first, because it's not good enough to just put information out there, but you need to understand who you're trying to reach to then reach them in the most strategic and effective way.
No, thank you so much, Will. And I think what you just highlighted for this project just really shows the impact of really understanding the audiences in the information environment, and also some of what it sounds like what you found were some successful tools and techniques to reaching the audience and to segmenting. And this is actually a really good pivot. And Anastasia, I'd like to come to you, and that is, would love to hear what some of the techniques and tools that you've used and you found really most effective in the work that you've done globally, really in segmenting audience and really understanding the impact of instability in the information environment.
Thank you, Vera. As I said, first to also, there are ideal tools and that there are available tools. Ideally, of course, I would segment the audience not only based on demographic characters, but for example, on psychological threats. And, once we understand that this person is more tempted to conspiracy thinking, we will address in a certain way. Once the person has an individualistic views, we will have certain messages. I think Facebook starts to look into this. There's some issues, of course, with privacy, but that would be ideal situation. But in reality, on a field, what you have again, if you have just few days, you don't have 6 months to conduct a huge research, which we also face a lot with donors. They come with a huge budget, great ideas, quite a rigorous research, but it's 6 months. It's late. They are sometimes it was misinformation. There is no turning point. So if you ignore something for a long time, then you will never be able to catch up. In our case, available platforms, how you use them. We have audio response platform. We have SMS platforms where we can send to different databases of people, very simple short questions. But as previous speaker mentioned, how you can use this data. It's not only about collecting data, but can you test narratives? So that's something what we were trying to use. So we were making a usual survey, not actually usual, we were doing behavior driver survey. So we were looking a little bit deeper, what drives behavior rather than just what are your attitudes, by asking people to click certain, click 1 if you want to share this, click 2, so to track their behaviors. Because there's also a lot of, biases in terms of how you report, what you think about vaccination and some unconscious things. And then secondly, we were also testing the message. So we were dividing people randomly into the 5 groups and providing them different frames. And again, in Ghana, one of the most successful frame was protect yourself, protect your loved ones or your family. So this altruistic frame works a lot. Messenger frame, that the vaccination is recommended by health providers, or social norm frame, where we say that most of the people in Ghana support vaccination, would work, quite well. And again, using, but then also looking to the insights, what would be the relevant messenger. Sometimes, in some countries, you may assume, okay, health workers, because it's vaccination. In Ghana context, no, that would be politicians, which didn't work, for example, in Ukraine, when some of the members of parliament were vaccinated, the campaign was under the threat. People really start backfiring. First, they don't trust the government, and what people do, do in government. And second, they don't recognize them as relevant. They were accusing them of using actually their status of being vaccinated first. Completely different situation here. So how you feel this? One very successful thing, I think, is also having people on a field that can track offline as well as any other tools through focus groups, and again, how quickly you can be prepared with Ignace methodology and to have these discussions and collect these rumors. So what we did, we had some sheets, very simple, very quick, of our civil society organizations collecting this and then matching it with online, and then having this data, observing it, comparing it with different literature reviews. Again, in Africa, we lack any kind of behavior science approaches because all of these samples that used before were from Western countries. So that's also, how you fit the data from literature that exists, like the mind space. Yes, fantastic tool. But it, incentives or making people, providing them incentives doesn't work here. And this you can do only by testing. So you test, and then that's some of the tools that work on our side. And of course, again, as I said, with segmenting, when we saw if you can roll out research quickly, we were able to make and divide our samples into the health workers, teachers, frontline workers. So we segmented them based on the audience we target with vaccination. So primary groups that were eligible for vaccination, and we saw, of course, quite negative trends. We saw that health workers are more negative than anyone else. Teachers are negative, also quite negative, and religious leaders extremely negative. So 25% of people said that they received negative misinformation and negative comments on vaccination from religious leaders. So then what you do next, in our case, the tool was not actually to say to religious leaders or focus our campaign on religious leaders, but actually to provide them tools to become like speakers for vaccination. As we know, with the people attitudes, you cannot change them just by targeting attitudes or providing information. You can change them through the behavior. So with the religious leaders, it was like different kind of frames and effective communication tools, which we provided them. And we advised them to use them in their work, not only on vaccination, but other health-related issues. But I think through doing this with their communities, through going through these tools and guides and how to frame messages, they were also prompted to change their behavior. So these are some of the tools we used in our case.
No, that's very fascinating. Let me just follow up with you for one question, and then I'm going to go over to Derege. You mentioned something which I think is really, really important. I mean, one is you use a pretty complex and multidisciplinary, if you will, set of tools to reach both online and offline, which I think is fantastic, because I think that's what you need. But how did you deal with some of the, you kind of alluded to this, but I just wanted to go a little further on this point. How did you deal with some of the data and privacy sets of issues when doing understanding the audience, citizens, and kind of segmentation? And if there were any challenges, especially like working with the local population and around data and privacy set of issues.
It is an issue. For example, some of the databases we had, these are the databases of people that receive social payments. So you have this fantastic database, yes, so covering, the most vulnerable groups, the people that actually, need to have access to vaccination first due to, their exposure to virus, due to their health issues. And can you use this database in order to run survey if they have not provided, they provided this information to receive social services, not to receive, maybe and be participants of the survey. This is an ethical issue. You need to make decisions fast. You need to compare, pros and cons and take responsibility. So in my case, yes, we use this data to ask them questions. Of course, that we follow they can always not respond. They should confirm that they want to participate in it. But initially, we always struggle with having, a sample that will be ethically approved. But with, at the same time, you also need to have researchers on board that will assure that the privacy standards are met. That's something what we always, of course, quite careful. And ethics, there are also a lot of issues, how far you can go with nudges and, how you can use some of the understanding from psychology do them communicating with people. So in our case, yes, there were challenges and a few challenges, but not with the privacy, actually with access to the data. And then how we deal with this data, I think, we do follow all standard protocols, not to allow any kind of breaks. However, I think health workers, they're not silent about their hesitancy. So it's not something what we reveal. They are by themselves communicating quite actively that they are against, and they share these concerns. And then again, how you deal with this issue that health workers by themselves would say we are against the vaccination, and they post in different WhatsApp groups, etc. And then how you react on this? Do you use like the punishment mechanism, or you will find actually, another strategical thinking how to deal with this group of people? But I think a lot of countries now face the same challenge. Like in Europe, there were some laws on prohibiting teachers and health workers to work if they are not vaccinated. Again, ethical issue, which should be resolved, I think, through comfortable nudging people rather than trying to punish them or eliminate or have negative incentives. Right. I would rather go with positive incentives.
I know that. Fantastic. Deirdre, over to you. I would love to kind of hear a little bit on the on the hate speech and disinformation youth project in Ethiopia. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of the tools and techniques that you use or have been using that you found successful, and maybe something that was not successful, even just to elucidate, but just kind of like what really worked to really reach different types of audiences? And I do want to piggyback the question that I asked Anastasia, and that is, were there any concerns with data and privacy as you were trying to understand and segment the audience?
Thank you, Vera, again. When it comes to this particular project, when it comes to tools, we were using dashboard to collect terms. First, we collect hate speech terms from the students and from the community. So through the 3-day or the 4-day or the 5-day workshop that we are going to spend with them. So students will collect hate speech terms in different languages. For this particular project, we were collecting hate speech terms in Amharic, Oromifa, and in Somali language. So we take that term and we validate it in the workshop and we put it into a dashboard. We have a tool, a software, we are assisted by a software company. Then that software collects those terms from Twitter, and mainly from Twitter and from Facebook comment pages and public pages. Then, I have to do a lot of data refining and cleaning in order to, because always context matters. The word doesn't mean always, because we are incentive terms, those terms doesn't mean that. In different contexts, that it doesn't mean that to hurt or to degrade people. So people's protected identity. So I do some cleaning, and after doing some data cleaning on the dashboard, we detect the trends by using the dashboard. Who is using, where, the geolocation, to what extent are the hate speech is going, to which direction is the hate speech going? Is it towards the religious, to the degrading religious groups or degrading ethnic groups? As you may know, Ethiopia is a very diverse country with diverse religion and diverse ethnic background. So after detecting that, using those tools, we formulate our next training packages and our seemingly counter messaging, or agreed upon counter messaging during the workshop. So that information or the trends that we get from the dashboard will inform every workshop, every interaction that we will have with the students. What really worked is the interaction with the students, the constant interaction with the students and with the community leaders, bringing on board and making sure that they own the idea, they are involved. It's not something that we impose on them. But the issue of hate speech, disinformation, the impact, I have seen it. It comes into everyone's doorstep, and it affected everyone's life. Somebody somewhere in Ethiopia have lost their loved ones by this violent conflict. And if you dig it deeper, these violent conflicts are really funding and propagated by the social media platforms, people who are disseminating hate speech and disinformation. So particularly the offline communities, the community members, they know it is there. So what really worked is constant engagement, trust building really worked very well with the communities. So we went there, when we told them our idea, and they enriched very immensely. So I think trust building and giving being open to the community leaders really helped and really worked. When it comes to concerns of data privacy, yes, it was really a huge issue and challenge, because during the COVID lockdown, universities were locked, universities were closed. So we created a Telegram group in order to interact with the students every day. So students will send me terms related with hate speech, as the terms are changing in relation with the political or the political landscape in the country. So one of the things is sharing those hate speech terms on the group Telegram is one of the issues. You know, it's like exposing the students to another. You know, it doesn't follow a do no harm approach. So we were very careful on that. The other data privacy that we have encountered is issues, challenges in relation with data privacy we have encountered with Facebook. Facebook doesn't allow any third parties to see people's posts or comments. So we were really not that much successful in engaging with Facebook, even though in Facebook with Facebook, even though Facebook is one of the mostly used in Ethiopia, so we couldn't capture the terms that were rotating or used by the Facebook platform. We tried, we captured through the public pages, but not as much as we did with Twitter, because it goes with Facebook privacy policy, data privacy policy. I tried to contact with the Horn Africa office of Facebook, and they are not that much collaborative to that extent. But we have good relationship when it comes to providing training materials and you know, those basic reporting mechanisms. Yeah, data privacy goes with do no harm approach. So as much as possible, we try to protect our students online, the online visibility, so that they will not be, you know, they will not be exposed to any online or offline harassment. So we were cautious about that.
Yeah, no, so you I think you like what you've pointed out. I think especially in Ethiopia, like you have to be very careful. Both there's like sensitivities that, you know, have to be in place in understanding the audience and segmenting, and kind of like the do no harm, as you would also mention. Will, let me kind of go over to you, and this is sort of the last question before we kind of open it to some of the audience related questions. And that is, I think through your work, Will, you've done audience segmentation and communication campaigns throughout the world. I'm curious as to what are some of the things that you would love to see in terms of tools and techniques you would love to see in the community, whether it's across the government and industries and the startup world and civil societies, that should be used in understanding and segmenting audience, you know. And I should say, you know, I sit here in Silicon Valley, like I am also very much plugged into the startup and ecosystem and emerging technology world that really impacts globally and developing nations as well. And so kind of like I hear from sort of my vantage point about segmentation and various tools and techniques that folks use and what has become sort of effective. But what I would love to hear from you is just like from your vantage point, you know, what are some of the things, not just the challenges, like what are some of the things that you'd be like, yeah, if I was king for the day, this is, you know, love to see this being used and being able to actually scale from even from the tech side and non-tech side across the different markets.
I mean, I wish you could see the big smile on my face / smirk as I go to answer this. But I mean, I think
clearly we'll have
first
to
and
catch up.
foremost,
Clearly
yeah.
we'll have to follow up on this, because this is a, sort of like, again, like important topic for me. And I think the reason I asked this question also with the idea that I really think that we need to be using technology very much in development solutions, and really understand the impact to a lot of these information related challenges. So really curious. I think there will be a lot of folks that will learn from you when we talk now.
Yeah, and I think that first and foremost, we're only as good as our data, and I think the call for more transparency is what needs to echo through the industry space, NGOs, just worldwide, governments very specifically. I mean, you look at Facebook and crippling CrowdTangle, and CrowdTangle was something we used in various projects and was very effective at trying to get to the root of how disinformation spreads on the platform. And today, in 2021, I can't say it's as easy as it was 6 months ago. And so it's I think we really collectively, as people in industry, researchers, everybody just needs to governments call on companies to be more transparent and provide access to data sets. Because that's the information we need to understand these things and then to help combat them. I mean, yeah, that's
awesome.
That's really, really central. I don't
awesome.
want to take up. I mean, I think that's the main point. I don't want to take up too much time because I want to allow us to get to everybody's questions.
Yeah, no, for sure. It sounds good. Okay, let me just there's been some really, really awesome questions from the audience. So I kind of want to go through them, and if we can just be mindful of time also, when kind of engaging and answering. So the first question, Georgia, I think it's really for you. In terms of, can you just comment a little bit about, I think it's a little bit more tactical in terms of conducting research in Ethiopia. And I'm wondering if there's also one of the reasons that question is asked is just sort of given sort of the conflict, overall sort of the conflict environment, if you will, in the country. So I would love to just, if you have a few words about research in Ethiopia.
Yeah, thanks, Vera. In relation with the hate speech and disinformation, I think I have come across in the past 2 years, I have come across only with one research conducted by the European Institute for Peace. Apart from that, there are some here and there, some workshops and trainings and capacity buildings by local CSOs. I haven't seen a full-fledged research that really got my interest, except one research in the past. That was 2020. Yeah, in the year 2020, one research has been conducted, and I participated in the dissemination of the research finding. So there's no that much training research is conducted in Ethiopia, given that the problem is immense and the challenge is big when that caused by disinformation and hate speech in Ethiopia. In 2013, one British university from Britain tried to scan the online landscape in Ethiopia. I think that's one of the oldest research that I have seen in 2013 or 14. The latest one is 2020. But to be on the record, there's no rigorous research going on in Ethiopia to understand disinformation and hate speech.
Great. Thank you so much. Anastasia, I'd love to turn to you. This is a really important question that someone asked, because at the end of the day, when we're dealing with audience segmentation and really understanding and countering, whether we're talking about disinformation or hate speech, or what I like to call is any ill in the information environment, even beyond disinformation, is really understand the impact of those efforts and the difference that the efforts that we're actually putting forth and the solutions that we put forth actually have. And so I would love for you to share your experiences and tools in what has worked and what has not worked to prove that the efforts that you have made in the programs and the tools, whether they've actually had a difference and whether they've actually had any impact. Have you seen any kind of measurable impact? And I think impact is a kind of an interesting word, because I think impact can be measured both qualitative in a more qualitative and quantitative sense, and obviously in behavior and reach, especially talking about disinformation. So I'm kind of curious from your perspective, from the efforts that you've been involved with.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think if somebody will find an answer, then we all will become not only public, good, but we will become a successful private companies as well. Yes, we will be able to justify what good we bring. But I think there are two parts. With the misinformation, first you need to understand what you're actually addressing. What is the impact, potential impact of the misinformation? So we use some metrics to identify the risk and how we will react on this. And then with a follow-up, actually, with the misinformation online, it's quite easy, because everything was online is quite easy to report and to track. So when we see and observe different groups in Ghana, everyone are on WhatsApp groups, and some misinformation you can track on media and social media, then it's easy. You see the beginning of the rumor, you see for the dashboard, we have dashboards similar to Ethiopia, we have a dashboard where we see how expanded it is. And then it's just data. It's purely big data. We see number of posts, negativity, or how positive or neutral they are. And when we have a response, we also can follow and see how the numbers will decrease or increase. So that's easy. With online, I think it's one of the tools which actually can prove what you are doing is right or wrong. With offline, is of course you can then observe, for example, on rates of vaccination. So you cannot, of course, claim directly that there is a causal effect between what you do and why people in this community started to vaccinate, but you can assume that if you did some intervention in this community and the community was before hesitant and the vaccination campaign was struggling, and then in 1 week the situation changed, then you see your efforts worked. With the president being vaccinated first, we saw the change in attitudes from 80% to twice. So 40% people still stayed negative or hesitant, but 40% in Ghana were actually changed their attitude to positive and they started to vaccinate. So research, online, if you can track it, offline, again, comparing data of vaccination rates, and also listening, as much as you can do social listening. Again, if you are able to do this offline, perfect. We try to do different methods to use, listening in communities, and listening through media and social media.
Great. Thank you for that. Will, I'd love to, there's another really great question. I think you may be very well equipped to answer this one. How will the proliferation of platforms, in your experience, and sort of also between now and kind of looking into the future, how will the proliferation of platforms affect audience segmentation analysis? And again, this person mentioned Parler and sort of the free speech, anti-censorship social networks to certain social media users. But, obviously, when we talk about proliferation of platforms, we're not just talking about sort of the main ones, the Twitters and the Facebooks and the YouTubes of the world, but we're really, in the United States, we're talking about, Parler, there's Telegram, in Taiwan, for example, there's Line. And so how might that affect? Is it just giving you sort of potentially more data, potentially just setting different audiences in terms of how they're using it? What's your perspective?
I mean, as online platforms, social media platforms turn into, the magazines of yore, where everything just becomes niche interest, I mean, it's going to be even more important to to really conduct research online and offline when you're provided with a communications challenge. You're going to definitely, you can't just rely on what the big platforms have always been, and really need to even start digging into what are these other, where are your audiences getting their messaging from in other ways? I mean, I think that's something, we've seen a lot in the United States with this last election cycle. It's not good enough to just, do what you've always done, and you have to create communication strategies, to continue. I mean, I think it just gets back to kind of the main point of this whole panel is you just got to constantly be paying attention to where your audiences are getting their information from, and then understanding, different ways to reach them. Because if you're not always iterating, you're just going to get left behind. And I think the proliferation of these new platforms is just the perfect example of that. You can't rely on what you've always relied on, or you're not going to, reach the targets you're trying to reach.
No, absolutely. Let me this will be kind of I'm going to 2-for-1, if you will, and we'll see on time if this will be sort of a concluding sort of set of questions as we kind of go around the virtual room or not. But I would love for you guys, and Deraja, I'm going to start with you, then go over to Anastasia and then back to Will, kind of share a success story where understanding the audience really helped understand the environment that you're operating in combating disinformation, hate speech, and other ills. And related to that, like it was really like what you felt like it was successful. And then related to that, this is a really interesting question. As part of the success story, were you able to flip the skeptics to really convince people that this approach works, and really to get people on your side? So Deraja, I would love to start with you.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. Yeah, just to begin with the success stories that I think with this project we managed to bring together all the stakeholders together, the law, well, in this case, all the institutions in Ethiopia which are relevant in combating online hate speech and disinformation, the Attorney General Office, the Human Rights Commission Office, the different universities, bring them together and to discuss, bringing them together, to have their say in the project is one of the success stories that I can assume. The other is, I think, the constant social media literacy and social media usage training that we have provided to the students, and the social media literacy, how to receive and how to counter-check or how to combat such online disinformation, hate speech, particularly to the offline community, to the community leaders and to the religious leaders. The success of I think that I can say the success of this project, because the students are, they are young, they can take the courses and their trainings easily, and yeah, they are already on the platform. They need a little ingredients so that they can, affect change in their environment. But dealing with community and religious leaders is a bit challenging, and we managed to get their trust, and I can assume that we were successful in convincing them to take the message to their constituency. Is one of the success story after all those team building and after all those trainings. I assume that they have taken the message and they are using it in their weekly or in their daily life, because these people are influential people in their communities. They do have social status in their community. What they say among their communities is not it's very much taken seriously. So using those community leaders or bringing or involving those community leaders really helped us. When it comes to the students' social media ability, usage of social media ability has really increased. That's why one of the, and they were very much interested in to replicate or to cascade to their departments or their students, their classmates. They bring all the time the new students so that they are there because they are interested in the training that we are offering them. You can see from their responses, and also they do their training materials among themselves. I think winning the trust of the community leaders and reaching out the wider community is one of the success that.
Anastasia, and I apologize, we have a few more minutes, but would love to hear real quickly sort of any success story in using this, and then how were you able in your work kind of flip the skeptics?
I think if I may, just 3 short things. So first, to take a risk and choose, the right messenger. So choosing President, King of Ashanti to get vaccinated was the success story, changed completely the structure. Second, to ensure continuous reaction to establish misinformation task force. So something we did with the government to get their involvement on board and do this continuously, this work, because it doesn't stop with the beginning of the campaign. We see ups and downs and new rumors coming in. And a third, I think, through the research, we saw from both sides the hesitancy from religious leaders, which was also confirmed by communities, that said one of the reasons why we are not getting vaccinated, we are waiting for guidance. And then what action you take? So in our case, we decided that we will do co-creation with religious leaders. So we will not try to campaign to them, but we would actually ask them to be part of, we train them, we use different guides. So we gave them some really interesting tools that they were using in their work, which beneficial for their work, but they included some messages on vaccination.
Excellent. And Will, last word to you for this question. Any kind of success story that you can comment on, as well as any kind of how you were able to flip the skeptics?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can. I'll take it from a little different approach with our pilot program about building capacity for this digital first fact checking organization in Bolivia. I mean, I think the biggest skeptics that we were able to turn were the members of the organization themselves, with what our team and the Dexis team came to them with on how to build an approach centered on your audience and how to not just create content and put it out into the ether. I think that was, we were able to help this organization forge new partnerships, become members of the International Fact Checking Network, get more tools and funding to, do their job better and to help the organization be commit to their mission of being the, beacon of truth in the country of Bolivia. But we never would have gotten there if they didn't buy into this concept of putting your audience first and then, making strategic decisions from there.
Great. No, thank you. That's excellent. So as you can see, that we can probably go on for a while around this conversation, but this has been really, really fantastic discussion, and I hope you got something out of it and learned something new. And really want to first and foremost thank all of the panelists, Anastasia, Deraje, and Will, and for Dexis to hosting this wonderful event. And with that, I wanted to turn over back to Tamara, who will take us away.
Great. Thank you so much, Vera, and thank you everybody for participating this morning. And this event will be recorded, so if you missed it, it will be on our Dexis Online social media channels and our website, and it's part of a series of conversations. So we look forward to seeing you at the next one. And if you couldn't answer your questions today, we hope to answer them subsequently. So thank you again to Vera, to our panelists, and to our participants. Have a great day.
Thank you all.